Hey everybody, I'm here today to talk to you about a bad reason why people lease cars, okay? Now, leasing is a great option for a few different reasons, but there is a very bad reason why people lease cars in our modern, current day society. Now, this will be partially a driving type video because it's all about leasing cars, but it's also going to be a little bit of a motivational rant, so prepare yourself for the legendary Mike Chimicata rant. All right, let's get right to it. If you want to lease a car, it's a great way to own a new car constantly because you can lease a car for 3 years, bring it back, get a new car for 3 years, bring it back, get a new car for 3 years, bring it back, get a new car for 3 years, and so forth. Now, leasing is actually proven statistically to be the most expensive way to own a car, to use a car, to drive a car over a long period of time. So over a long period of time, it's actually the most expensive way. If you compare the idea of buying a car and keeping it for 10 years and then selling it and buying a new car and keeping it for 10 years and blah, 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 as opposed to leasing a car is the most expensive way to own a car in the long term, but it is the least expensive way to own a car in the short term. And that's because if you look at the financing costs versus the leasing costs of an identical car, it's going to be way cheaper to lease a car than to finance it. So you have a good amount of people that walk into a dealership and they say, well, I can get into this car for like $300 a month, and to own it, it's going to cost me $500 a month. Why would I buy when I can lease it? Then I can bring it back and I can get a new car in 3 years and so forth. Now, it's okay to lease a car, in my opinion. It's a good reason if you're looking at it as a temporary option, or if you have a lot of money and you are looking at the premium option of having a new car consistently. So you're willing to pay more to own a car, to use a car over the next 10, 20, 30 years, but you have the money to afford it. A bad reason to lease a car is when someone uses it as a way to get into a more expensive car that they actually can't afford. Now, I'll tell you right now, as a rule of thumb, you should only be spending roughly a third of your annual income on a car. Meaning if you make $90,000 a year, you shouldn't spend roughly more than $30,000 on a car. Meaning you shouldn't buy a car that's worth more than 30 grand. Now that goes whether you're buying a new car, financing it, or leasing it, okay? Now some people will say, well, look, okay, I make $90,000 a year. I can afford to lease a $30,000, I can afford to finance a $30,000 car. But if I lease a car, look at this, I can get myself into a $50,000 car. So they actually go up, they upgrade into a car that they shouldn't be able to afford, but they lease it. They end up maxing out their payments, leasing a car. Over the next 30 years of their life, they end up taking on a second mortgage or extending their mortgage. They end up not being able to save as much money as they need to, all because they tricked themselves into thinking that they could afford a car through leasing it, okay? Now, we often see this with luxury cars. It's very rare that someone will get themselves into a low-level car that they can't afford. Most people in that situation will just not buy a car, or they'll just buy a used car. Oftentimes you'll see this when someone goes out, and I'm not going to name manufacturers, but you know who I'm talking about. I'm not going to name the car manufacturers, but we all know someone that went out and bought this high-end car that we were like, you can't afford that. Why would you buy that? I know how much you make. I know you can't afford that. And they buy it, and then you find out they're leasing it, and you find out that they're probably drowning in debt 5 or 10 or 20 years later. In my opinion, like I said, it's a harsh opinion, but it's the truth. And I hope I'm not offending anyone too much, because if you're in a position, like I know when I bought things that I couldn't afford, I know that I bought those things that I couldn't afford. I wasn't fooling myself into thinking that I could afford them. And I've bought things that I couldn't afford. So hopefully I'm not over offending in the sense that if you maybe bought a car that you couldn't afford and you're leasing it simply because you couldn't afford to finance it, or it's out of your price range to buy it, then you need to rethink your financial situation, or you need to accept the fact that you're not nearly going to have as much money as you thought you were going to have. It's as simple as that in the long run. So that's it. This is like a driving/rant video, a little bit of both. But in this video, I've gone over a bad reason why people lease cars. Like, I am not a financial guru. I'm not a financial master. But people tend to lease cars that they can't afford sometimes. And it's a bad reason for people to lease cars. Horrible reason. And that's it. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Let me know what you think down below as a comment. And of course, be sure to subscribe for more great car and driving videos just like this one. And that's all I have for you today. Thanks for watching.